So I wanted to discuss a little bit today about the ritvik controversy in ISKCON. What is a ritvik? A ritvik is a priest. Priest is a representative of the acharya, and it's very famous in the Christian religion that they have a system of priests all over the religion, and the priest is a representative of Jesus, who is the acharya of the Christians. And the priest gives baptism on behalf of Jesus. So, in that sense, he's initiating people by acting as a proxy, a representative of Jesus. So the first criticism we get of the ritvik system is, well, we don't want to be like the Christians. We don't want to have a Christian system of priests who are initiating on behalf of the acharya and who are administering the religion on behalf of the acharya. We don't want that. Okay, well, why don't you want that? I mean, that's how you organize a religion. You have a priest. You have a church council, which is like a governing body, which is what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted a governing body that would administer and regulate and manage the religion, including that the governing body would oversee and act as an oversight group to manage the priests. That way we would ensure that we had a proper priest performing the functions according to Prabhupada's standards. And if the priest deviated, then he would have to be replaced, which is what Prabhupada says on the May 28th tape. When or if the ritviks deviate, they will have to be replaced. So that means, just like in the church, if a priest becomes an alcoholic, he starts gambling in Reno, he starts seeing prostitutes, this type of thing, then the church council has a meeting, and they say, Father John, he's causing a problem. What are we going to do? Well, we have to get rid of Father John, and we have to move in another priest to take over his position. And that is how the church is managed and moderated. And that's how the oversight works. So why don't we want that in the Krishna religion? It's pretty obvious, because then you just have a Maverick authority who has no oversight, no management, and no way to moderate his behavior if he deviates. So this has been one of the reasons that people have objected to having a system of priests with an oversight committee in ISKCON, is because it has allowed for all types of maverick acharya wannabe type people to really go off the rails, and there's no way to contain and control them because they're claiming to be acharyas who are above the management of a committee, which is correct. An acharya is not monitored by a committee. An acharya doesn't have to take advice from a committee. So only a ritvik would have to take advice from a committee. Only a priest or a representative would have to take advice from a committee. So Prabhupada said, after I'm gone, there will be a governing committee. So that automatically means they're not going to be acharyas, because you're going to have a committee of people overseeing the society, and they're replaceable if they deviate. That is what he said. If they deviate, they will be replaced. That means they're fallible people. They're not infallible acharyas. They are like a priest, a fallible person who represents the church as long as he follows the standards. But if he deviates, let's say he deviates, and he has to be removed, well, all the people that he initiated or gave baptism to don't have to get re-baptism. They just go on worshiping Jesus, because it's understood that their real connection is to the acharya. But in ISKCON, they've tried a system where as soon as the person who initiates bloops, then he's reinitiated by another person, then reinitiated by another person, because they're trying to say that the connection is not to the acharya, the connection is to the temporary person who's performing the ceremony, who's a fallible person. So this is creating a lot of confusion, and some people have been reinitiated 4 times. We know a woman who's been reinitiated because her first guru fell down, and so she was provided another guru. He fell down. Then she was given another guru. He fell down. So that is not an eternal situation, obviously. The eternal situation is to be connected to the Acharya directly. That is your eternal, say, link to God. So as soon as the ritvik system is disturbed or overturned or overruled, then it creates all kinds of artificial problems, including that you have Maverick, independent so-called acharyas who are basically answerable to no one. So this is the problem in ISKCON. They try to tell their acharyas, you can't do this, you can't date your secretary, you can't go to the movies, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't start the Krishna West program, which was not authorized by Prabhupada. And the acharya, supposedly, the person thinking he's an acharya, will just say, well, hey, go fly a kite, I'm the acharya, I can do what I want. I don't need to listen to the committee. So it's creating a problem of authority in ISKCON and also management in ISKCON. How can you manage a society where you have maverick independent people just willy-nilly doing whatever they feel like, based on this false assumption that they are as good as God, sum total of the demigod acharyas. Now, another objection to the ritvik idea is that we really have no way of knowing if Prabhupada has accepted this person or not. Well, even when Prabhupada was here, many times the names of 4 or 5 people would be sent from a temple, say for example, Chicago temple, and Prabhupada didn't meet those people, and they didn't meet Prabhupada. They just had their names recommended. So, and then Prabhupada would take them on as his disciples without any so-called personal arrangement of meeting these people in person. So that was already being done. There was already a lot of people who didn't meet Prabhupada in person, and they were just accepted on the recommendation of someone else. So someone else recommended, and Prabhupada accepted just on the recommendation of another person. So that was the main system that we had going on. So why would that change? If someone recommends a person to Prabhupada, why would he reject that person now? And where did he say he would reject that person later on? Without his personal approval. He never said anything like that. So the other thing that's very clear is that many new people who are worshiping Prabhupada are certainly a lot more fired up than some of the older people who were original so-called disciples of Prabhupada. Just because they were supposedly accepted by Prabhupada, but now they're watching football, doesn't mean they're accepted now. So to be accepted by Prabhupada means to follow what Prabhupada says and the process that he's giving. Then you're accepted. But the same question could be raised, how do we know that Krishna is accepting bhoga offerings? We offer bhoga to Krishna. How do we know he's accepting? We don't know anything for sure. We just have to accept everything on faith. We have faith that Prabhupada is accepting the service of the people who are serving him now under the ritvik system. We have faith that Prabhupada is accepting the bhoga offerings that are being made. So we offer the bhoga to the pure devotee, we offer the disciples to the pure devotee, and we have faith that it's being accepted. And it's obviously working because the people that are being offered to Prabhupada now, in many examples, are more fired up, are serving better than other people are doing. So proof is in the action that we see. They're acting in Krishna consciousness. So their service is accepted. How can we prove that their service is not being accepted? Wouldn't that be a better question? Now, in addition, Prabhupada says that if you offer bhoga to a conditioned soul, it's not accepted. And if you offer disciples to a conditioned soul, it's not accepted by Krishna. So the only system that he has established is that you have to offer the bhoga and offer the disciples to a pure devotee. That is the only process he ever authorized. So whether it's being done by proxies or not, there is no other system. So the critics of the ritvik system are saying, we can't have a ritvik system where bhoga and disciples are being offered to Prabhupada. We need another system. Well, okay, what is your other system? who are we going to offer the Boga and the disciples to? You have to identify who else that is. So this is a problem we're having with people like Rochan and Torben and Ajit Krishna and Kailash Chandra, Hanuman Croatia, and similar other people. They say, we can't offer things to the GBC because they're bogus. Okay, we're not going to offer Boga and disciples to the GBC, they're bogus. And we can't offer the Boga and the disciples to Prabhupada either because that's the bogus ritvik system. Okay, so we're just not going to offer anything to Krishna at all. We're not going to offer through the GBC system. We're not going to offer through the ritvik system. Just forget about worshiping Krishna totally. So their system is kind of like neti. It's not this, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Okay, well, what is it? We don't know. They don't say. So what they're really doing is just stopping the whole process. So we don't offer Boga to anybody. We don't offer disciples to anybody. We just shut everything down. That's also not working, which is why these guys can't make a program. They can't make any system, of temples and initiations or big book distribution or any other systematic program because their idea is just to stop everything, which is definitely not what Prabhupada wants. It's not what Krishna wants. Just stop everything. Don't offer to the GBC, don't offer to Prabhupada, don't offer anything. So you're going to be eating Boga. You're not going to offer the Boga to anybody. You're going to be eating Boga. You're not going to offer the disciples to anybody. They're not going to be connected to Krishna. So then you've ended and then they say we have ended the parampara. No, your system of ending everything is what's ending the parampara. We're continuing the parampara by saying it does continue by offering the Boga and offering the disciples to Prabhupada. That is the system. So what these people are saying is that Prabhupada wanted everything to just grind to a halt. Now, it's interesting that Prabhupada said, in order to install deities, you need to have Brahmins to do the deity worship. In Berkeley, here at the temple, when we installed more deities, Prabhupada said, you can do that, but you're going to need 50 Brahmins on hand at all times to do the puja. So the people who say we shouldn't worship the GBC anymore, and we shouldn't worship Prabhupada under the ritvik system anymore, and therefore we shouldn't have any initiations anymore, are essentially saying we should have no more deity worship. We're not going to have any initiated Brahmins to do the deity worship. That is definitely not what Krishna wants. Krishna wants all of the deity worship to stop, and we should put them in a box and put them in the storage somewhere, which has happened to some deities because there was no one to worship them. So that doesn't make sense either. We should just stop worshiping Krishna and put him in a box and move him off to the storage somewhere because we're not going to have any Brahmins to do the puja. But another interesting thing about the people who criticize the ritvik system and the GBC system, they are themselves acting as proxies for the Acharya. They're acting as, they're not claiming to be Acharyas themselves. They're just saying their way is the only interpretation of Prabhupada's instruction. And what Prabhupada instructed was to shut it down and have nothing. No deity worship, no initiations. You're not going to offer the Boga to anybody. No Boga will be offered to nobody. So the Boga is not offered. The deities are not getting offerings. We're not initiating people because we can't offer those people to Prabhupada. Everything stops. And that is what they think is Prabhupada's instruction. No, Prabhupada says we need to expand everything. We need more Brahmins. Prabhupada says that in many, many, many places. We need more Brahmins. We need to train them up. We need more deities, more deity worship, and so on and so forth. That is clearly what he ordered and wanted. He never said, shut it down. That's not what he said. Now, some people have asked me, what about Krishna Kant of the IRM? What's his view on the ritvik situation? And way back when he started in 1997, he told me that we could only have people initiating in the capacity of ritviks from the original 11, because those 11 had been appointed by Prabhupada as ritviks. Therefore, we had to convince some of them or all of them to be ritviks and continue the process only through those people. But I said at the time that's very unrealistic. These people are not interested in following the ritvik system. They've vested themselves in making themselves acharyas, and it's a big multi-million-dollar financial program that they have going on now. They're not going to change that just to satisfy a couple of us dissenters. But he was very convinced, and some of the people working with him, like Kamsahanta, they told me, oh, Pranjan, we're going to convince the GBC, we're going to have some of them become ritviks, don't worry about it, and you need to just take a vacation. We're going to send you to the Bahamas, and you can sit on the beach there, and the GBC will pay for it. Well, sure. Get me out of the country, and then, that'll be a good place where I can get whacked by some people. That's the way I looked at it. I didn't think it was realistic, but they said that I was a bargaining chip. If they could get me to pipe down, then that would help them convince the GBC to become ritviks. But so I didn't agree. I thought we're going to need to just put the hammer down on the GBC, period. I didn't think we could negotiate anything. And I think I've been proven right. I don't see how Krishna Khan over all this time has convinced any of the GBC to do anything. It doesn't look like that's happening. But they were so far, optimistic at the time. Kamsahanta told me within 6 months the GBC is going to adopt the ritvik system. I mean, that's how confident they were at the time. They just thought that the GBC had a slight misunderstanding of things, and they were going to fix that. Not really. But meanwhile, at the same time, I was starting a lawsuit, helping put together a lawsuit for the changed books. I didn't think that the GBC would ever produce original books, and we were going to have to get original books through a lawsuit. Well, Krishna Khan thought that was a bad idea. He thought, well, if we sue the GBC, take them to court, that's going to antagonize them, then they won't agree to be ritviks. And simultaneously, I was helping put together a lawsuit over the child molesting. Again, same thing. That's a bad idea. That's going to antagonize the GBC. Simultaneously, I was coming out with the poison issue. Same thing. They didn't want me to do that. They thought that's a bad idea. When I went out to announce the poison issue at the Rath Yatra, one of the IRM people stood at my door and was trying to block me from getting out the door. So they didn't think that our emphasizing the criminal aspect of the GBC was a good plan because it would antagonize them and they wouldn't cooperate with this so-called reform that they were trying to put together. But I think time has borne out that I was correct. The GBC is not going to really change. They're not going to become ritviks. They're not interested in that, at least not officially. They're kind of becoming ritviks through the back door. They're implementing more and more legislation and rules for gurus, which means the person who's under rule and under regulation and under committee monitoring is not an acharya. He's really a ritvik. So they're kind of adopting the ritvik idea through the back door. Yes, our gurus need censoring, they need monitoring, they need suspending for deviations, and they need maybe excommunication when they deviate too far. So only a ritvik, a priest, would have these rules applied to him. A priest can be censured, a priest can be monitored, a priest can be exiled, a priest can be removed and excommunicated and all these kinds of things. That all applies to a priest. So they're adopting the ritvik idea through the back door, and Trivakram actually said that one time. He got really infuriated. He said, oh, we're putting all these rules on the gurus. We're making our whole system into a ritvik system anyway. Anyway, the bottom line with Krishnakant is he thought no one should be giving ritvik initiations right now, and he himself never took a ritvik initiation from anyone. I guess he's still waiting for some of them or all of them or a few of them to become ritviks, but that's just not happening. And meanwhile, the 11 are just, petering out. They're getting old, they're dying off, and they're sick and they have all these problems, and to expect them to change is just very unrealistic. I think we have to all agree that the ritviks are going to have to emerge out of a different situation. They're not going to emerge out of the official GBC group. It's not going to happen. But they will have an increase in their rules and regulations, and they will adopt a sort of de facto ritvik program, which they're doing gradually. So they're going to adopt our idea over time. They're just not going to admit they're adopting our idea. So I think that later on Krishnakant blamed me for the failure of the ISKCON reform movement. He was unable to reform the GBC gurus because I went forward with the book changes lawsuit, and this became very widely publicized and created quite an uproar within the devotee community. The child molestation lawsuit created another huge uproar. The poison issue, well, it was very small at first, but it gradually became a bigger issue. And Krishnakant lost quite a few of his people over to the poison issue. Some of the important people that were part of the IRM left the IRM to join with my effort to promote the poison issue and investigate the poison issue. And subsequently, I don't know, probably 10,000 devotees believe the poison issue right now. So, Krishnakant tried to squash all these issues, the book changes issue, the child molesting issue, the poison issue, and he even wrote that on his website, complaining about me and saying the child molestation lawsuit was just unnecessary. Apparently it's not necessary to rescue children who are being molested. So this shows me that he had a lot of sympathy for the GBC. He thought he could work with them, compromise with them, sit at their table and get a piece of the pie from them. And if he would push back on the book changes issue, the child molesting issue, and the poison issue, they would give him a reward. They would give him a piece of the Judas gold and give him a position within their situation. But that was not meant to be. A lot of different people have tried to compromise with the GBC and get a position from them and a seat at their table, and it just didn't work out because their demands were just, full 100%. You got to surrender to what they're doing, and if you don't do that, you don't get a seat there. So Krishnakant thought, I'm going to bring them to my table, but I'm going to compromise on their side, and that just doesn't work with those people. There are cases where compromise is good and might bring out some kind of reward for you, but in that situation, it wasn't meant to be, and I tried to say that. So the result of that was that Adridharan, who was Krishnakant's associate, got into all kinds of legal trouble later on because the GBC made some trumped-up charges, supposedly, against him, and he became on the run from the law and all the rest of it. So just like I had told them, if you don't go in with the big stick, they will come back at you with a big stick, and that's what happened. Adridharan got whacked with a big stick from the GBC. So, but at any rate, now how does all this relate to the ritvik issue? Well, it shows the GBC are not qualified to be acharyas. That's why they're doing all this duplicitous stuff and causing all these problems. And they're trying to suppress us when we want the original books, when we want to address the child molesting, when we want to address the poison issue, when we want to address so many other crimes that have been going on in their empire. Like all kinds of crimes were going on at New Vrindavan. These things would not be going on if these guys were acharyas. So, apart from all the other arguments that people can come up with, the number one argument is all of this criminal activity, molesting activity, banning of devotees, beating of devotees, assassination of devotees, poisoning complaint from Prabhupada, so many things, would not have emanated from a group of pure devotees. We wouldn't have had all these problems if these guys were really acharyas, which they claimed they were. We are the appointed acharyas. We're as pure as God. We're as pure as Prabhupada. We are Prabhupada's successors. Well, all this would not have happened. So many people have told me, never mind all the other issues. They're simply not acharyas, which is self-evident by their activities and the results of their activities. So they could not have been appointed as acharyas because Prabhupada knew that they are conditioned souls and they're prone to so many defective activities. So he would not have said that these people, who it was well known are subject to defective behavior, that these people are my successors, or they're God's successors, or they're Krishna's successors, or they're acharyas, or they're parampara members. This never could have happened simply by dint of the fact that they were not qualified, which became, very much manifest very quickly after Prabhupada departed, and all their activities, went downhill in a hurry because they were overly ambitious. And so the problem was accelerated because once they took the post of Acharya, it became very difficult to question and challenge what they were doing. So disrupting the ritvik order created chaos. And that is, of course, in the story of Paranjan, which is my story, in the Bhagavatam. After the Acharya departs, there's all kinds of swamis, yogis, avatars, which immediately come out of the woodwork and create trouble. So that is what happened. So they're bogus. They're bogus swamis, bogus yogis, bogus avatars, and so on and so forth. They're not qualified. So they manifest simply because when the cat is away, the mice will play. That's just, that's just the nature of the material world. So they are not ritviks. So Krishna was correct to say we need to try to corral them in and make them ritviks, but you're not going to force those guys to be ritviks. So we need our own ritviks. We're going to have to create our own wave of ritviks. And like in San Francisco area where I am, the Bay Area, there's millions of people living here, and there's probably within 20 miles of here, there's 1,500 churches where I could go and get a ritvik initiation. I could get baptized at all these different places. So that's what we need. We need to have many, many ritviks in many, many areas, and we need local people doing local things. And I think that is what Prabhupada eventually envisioned. He would start with a small number of ritviks, and then they would vote in more and expand and create more and more people doing this function. And it wouldn't be just in the hands of a very small elite group of people. That is not going to work. We already have some problem with a few people who are doing the ritvik initiations thinking, I need to give living guidance to the people I'm, initiating, even though we live a long distance away. No, the guidance should be deputed to other people who are local and who are there, and we need to create a local infrastructure where people can come and get guidance and get programs and so on and so forth. We can't have a centralized thing, whether it's the GBC thing or the ritvik thing. It just doesn't work when you have an overly centralized, everything is in one location and everybody has to go to this one person in this one location. That just doesn't work. It won't work. And, hopefully people will start to break that down, and I think that will break down over time, and we will have more and more devotees preaching on behalf of Prabhupada, initiating on behalf of Prabhupada, and creating programs on behalf of Prabhupada, and then the movement will take off and start expanding, and that's slowly happening at the present time with the so-called ritvik process. Meanwhile, the ISKCON process is clearly diminishing. They have fewer and fewer and fewer people. They're winding down temples, trying to sell temples because there's no people. They can't attract people to worship conditioned souls as acharyas. It is not working. So a lot of the technical details of the ritvik issue, the July 9th letter, the will, the 1977 conversations, all that has been covered in other places, so I don't really need to go through all that all over again here, but it's very readily available. There are many documented statements from Prabhupada where he said, after I'm gone, there's only going to be a GBC, and do not make false gurus. It's not going to work. Don't go to the Gaudiya Math. Don't do what the Gaudiya Math did. Do not change anything. He put his murtis in his temples for his worship to continue. That's all there is to it. So we hope that will manifest more, and by Krishna's arrangement, it is manifesting. Now, one of the things that's happening in ISKCON is they are gradually accepting the ritvik idea through the back door, as we tried to say earlier. So I wanted to give an example of that. Badri Narayan, who is a GBC for San Diego, he actually wrote a paper some years ago after Rameshwar left, saying that the disciples of ISKCON should be considered as the property of Prabhupada and not as the property of the so-called living GBC guru. Because when Rameshwar leaves, or when Kirtananda leaves, or when Jayatirtha leaves, or when one of their gurus leaves, they often take several thousand people out of ISKCON along with them. A whole bunch of people leave, or they bloop, or they get discouraged, or they follow the new guru into another process. So this, keeps reducing the manpower and the assets and the monetary income of ISKCON. It's causing a big drain on ISKCON. And it's also spawning competition for ISKCON. If a bunch of people go and leave and they start following Jayatirtha's the peace Krishnas, he calls himself, and you lose a couple thousand people to that group, well, they're competing with ISKCON. He's taking manpower out of ISKCON, money out of ISKCON, assets out of ISKCON to start his own thing. And that's happening now with Krishna West by Hridayananda. Hridayananda is converting chunks of ISKCON into his own little sectarian group, the Krishna West group. And he's trying to reform ISKCON and change ISKCON and say ISKCON should adopt his style of presenting Krishna consciousness. And so there was a big tussle going on between the GBC and Hridayananda, and finally the GBC relented. They realized if we lose Hridayananda, we're going to lose a bunch of temples and a bunch of people. So they're trying to incorporate his thing into ISKCON. But it won't work, because even the GBC knows the Krishna West idea is bogus and wrong. We can't implement these deviations into ISKCON and still call ourselves ISKCON. So what the bottom line of all this is that more and more people are just realizing, wow, the real shelter is Prabhupada. These GBC guru guys are simply, fighting over manpower, fighting over money, fighting over buildings, and they're not fighting over presenting the actual original Siddhanta of Prabhupada. So maybe we should just take shelter of Prabhupada. So we're getting an increasing number of readers from ISKCON into our websites and so on and so forth, and they're agreeing with our idea of emphasizing Prabhupada. And some people in ISKCON have had 2 or 3 gurus, and they just gave up and said, I'm just going to worship Prabhupada now. I'm not going to accept another guru that's presented to me from the GBC. So we're kind of introducing the ritvik idea into ISKCON in different ways, and it is increasing. We're getting more interest in the idea, which is why ISKCON keeps writing papers, the ritviks are deviant, the ritviks are bad news, and all this kind of thing. Well, yeah, the ritviks are emphasizing Prabhupada, and that's, if people would have a choice between worshipping Prabhupada or worshipping a conditioned soul GBC, they would much rather worship Prabhupada than a conditioned soul. So our idea is very attractive. And the only reason their idea has won at all is by repression, by, banning us, beating us, kicking us out, calling the police on us, arresting us, harassing us, and sometimes assassinating some of us. That's how their system works. It only works by vicious repression. and lawsuits and, suing our people and all this kind of thing. That's how they, stay in power, by very aggressive techniques. So that won't last. You can only stay in power by aggressive techniques for a limited period of time. This, has always been the case. Just go back to when Krishna was here. Kamsa was a very aggressive guy. He used all kinds of aggressive techniques, but in the end, his whole thing collapsed. And the GBC thing will collapse and is collapsing, and the right thing will emerge and is emerging. More and more people in ISKCON are saying, hey, let's worship Prabhupada. That's the real shelter. And so, Prabhupada says an artificial thing cannot stand, and the right thing is to worship Prabhupada, and that will emerge and is emerging. So how does everything go forward from here? I think different alliances will start shaping up over time. We are trying right now to just promote all the different ritvik groups, even if they're not working together officially, or they have some semi-alliance or some cooperation going on. But overall, we are eventually going to have to come up with some kind of a Brahminical council, which will be the same as the GBC. We'll have to have some kind of a management oversight group which will monitor the ritvik groups. And then that committee will make sure that the Brahmins who are acting as ritviks are actually up to the standard, and if there's a problem, we'll have to adjust that and remove that person, and so on and so forth, just like a council of churches manages the churches. And if a priest is going wayward, then they go in and replace that priest, and so on. So we need to have eventually a council to manage the ritvik organization, which is what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted a governing body that would manage and have oversight over his mission. So his mission will have to be reformed, the GBC will have to be reconstituted, and there'll have to be alliances amongst the different groups and temples and programs that are all promoting Prabhupada. And that's required for all kinds of reasons. We need legal rights to the books, and the best way to do that is with an organized group. We may have legal challenges from the GBC, and the best way to defeat that and refute that is with a group, because they can pick off one guy here, one guy there, but if there's a group, there's strength in the group. So we need that. We need the legal rights to the books also. So many things need to be done in a cooperative way, and that will eventually emerge. I have confidence in that. And it's already sort of emerging that way. The different groups are starting to make programs and make progress. And, there's some criticism of, say, for example, the Bangalore program, because they're taking bad money from corrupt companies. Well, Prabhupada took money from abortion doctors and stayed at a winery when we were in India, and Prabhupada took money from that guy. Prabhupada never said, we cannot accept money from this company or this individual, or he never had anything like that organized. So I'm a little surprised now that people are saying Bangalore should not take money from this group or that group. But we had the same problem. We had the Sanat, Mukunda, Prahlad, HKC, Jaipur guys. They came out saying that me and Salochan are bogus because we're using taxi driving money. So they wanted us to quit what we were doing and go get better jobs. We should go to college and get a higher education and get a nice job. So that they're very materialistic people. They think that devotees have to have a higher source of income. But Prabhupada never worried about that. I mean, we even had devotees working at a cigarette factory at one time. And Prabhupada just said, well, see if they can find a better job. He didn't stop them. He didn't say, we can't have that, And when Prabhupada started, some of the devotees were working in a hamburger place. And Prabhupada was taking money from there, and he was taking money from Jayananda, who was driving a taxi. So I think at some point we have to realize the ritvik groups may have to get income from wherever they can get it from. It's Kali Yuga. We may have devotees doing different things. We shouldn't start making a whole critical analysis and start some kind of a committee to analyze who's getting their income from where and this type of thing. We have to become more cooperative and more accepting of each other's situations. And, some temples will have to make certain accommodations to their local situation. So we should have an alliance, people who are overall trying to promote Prabhupada. And they may have some differences in their individual approach. And, for example, my approach, very few devotees like my approach, even amongst the so-called ritviks. They think I'm way over the top, way too heavy, way too this, way too that. Well, but I'm an individual. And I'm working according to my capacity and my understanding and my own independent personality. So we have to accommodate other people as long as their overall principle is to promote Prabhupada as the Acharya. So I'm hoping that these differences will become overlooked more and more, and the alliance will grow more and more, and we won't start these dogmatic or fanatical camps that don't accept the other camp and this type of thing. That will not help the overall ritvik effort, and it's hampered us a lot in the past. People don't agree with the strategy and the vision of other people, whereas they should just let those people go ahead and do their own vision of how to promote Prabhupada, and let's see how it works. Let them do it, I think that's what Prabhupada did. He had all kinds of people, like Vishnu Jan and Jayananda and all kinds of very diverse personalities, and he just got all of them together, and they all did their Krishna conscious thing in their own way, and that's how he had success. And if we're going to have success, we're going to have to adopt the same principle. But I'm very confident that'll happen over time. Over time, people will start to realize we have to work together, we have to cooperate together, we have to promote Prabhupada together. That way, combinedly, we can print books, combinedly, we can make programs, combinedly, we can send devotees from one place in the world to another place in the world, and they'll have a shelter here and there and wherever they go, which is how Prabhupada wanted things to be done in the first place. So I would like to end this by offering my obeisances to all of the people who have assisted me over the years since I started doing this way back in 78, 79. And I would like to offer my obeisances to all the people in the future who will come to worship Prabhupada and accept him as their Acharya, which I am very confident will happen and will continue over thousands of years of time into the future. And if I have to come back here again to this planet, I hope that I'll be one of those people. Jai, all glories to Prabhupada. Haribol.